What's going on, guys? It's Sean from DoubleClutchHD, and I'm coming at you with another MLB predictions video. And today we're going to be looking at the NL Central, so let's get right into it. Alright, so first we're going to start off with the Chicago Cubs. They went 66-96 last year, 5th in the NL Central, basically last. So they added Jose Veras, Justin Ruggiano, and George Kateris to their squad, while losing Brian Bogusevic, Daniel Bard, and Matt Gamble. So basically, Jose Veras is supposed to be their closer. He is aging, so I'm thinking they're just using him as a spot closer for like 1 or 2 years. They got him on a manageable contract, so I don't know why they signed him other than to just have a closer. But I would rather have them have a young guy that they want to develop in the minor leagues come up and have some MLB experience. But I guess that's what they decided to go with. Theo Epstein, he probably has something up his sleeve. And then Justin Ruggiano, just a little support in the outfield. And George Kateris, I think he's a catcher, and he'll be a nice backup catcher for them. And now they lost Brian Bogusevic. I don't know. I don't really know who he is. I've heard of him. I think he might be an outfielder, or I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know that well. But Daniel Bard, he hasn't pitched in a year, I don't think. I think he had Tommy John surgery, and it never really came back. He was on the Red Sox, and then he came to the Cubs on a minor league deal, I guess. His situation is like Ryan Madson. Madson got picked up by the Angels, and he just never could get back to form. And I think Madson actually got picked up by another team, so we'll see how he does. But Daniel Bard, I don't think he's not coming back to the Cubs, at least. And then Matt Gamble, another just utility guy, so they lost him as well. So now let's look at their projected lineup, and it looks like their shortstop will be Starlin Castro leading off. He had a decent year last year, 278, 9 homers, and 49 RBI, 11 stolen bases. A bit of a down year, I guess, because he had 550 at-bats, but he's still developing, so we'll see how he turns out. And then Luis Valbuena is projected to be their starting third baseman. 10 homers, 36 RBI, 255 average last year. And a solid player, but definitely better options at that position. Anthony Rizzo, you know he's going to be the big name on the Cubs who's going to try to develop. And the Cubs, they're building around him and Castro, so we'll see how he does this year. He had a good year last year, 22 homers, 86 RBI, 273 average. So he's definitely a good player, and I think he'll end up being a premier first baseman, up there with like Paul Goldschmidt and Albert Pujols and those kind of guys. I wouldn't call Albert Pujols elite at this point, but he's still up there because he's so good. But Anthony Rizzo will definitely be up there, but he still needs maybe 1 or 2 years to develop. Nate Shearholtz, he's also getting up there in age, but the Cubs wanted to keep him. They just need someone to fill that left field spot, and Shearholtz is definitely a good option. 16 homers, 68 RBI, and 272 average last year. So he can get on base as well. So that's what, and his 470 slugging percentage is probably why he's batting cleanup. And then we have Junior Lake, another one of the Cubs prospects. I guess he's kind of a surprise because no one really gave him that much attention, like they give attention to Starlin Castro and Anthony Rizzo. But he's turned out to be a very nice young man, and I think he'll develop to be a starting outfielder, I believe. And next we have Ryan Sweeney, another guy, just solid, 266, 6 homers, 44 RBI, and he just dared to fill the spot. Wellington Castillo is your starting catcher. He was a backup last year, I believe, or maybe he shared time with someone else. So this year he'll probably have more playing time with George Kateris behind him. So like every 3-game series, he'll probably get 2 games, you know. So he had 375 at-bats last year, 251 average, and he's batting at the bottom of the order, so it doesn't really matter. Darwin Barney, he's also a solid player, but I don't think he's panned out like the Cubs wanted him to. He was a pretty good prospect at one point, but I think he's starting to fall off, and we'll see how he does this year. All right, so their starters look like Jeff Samardzija, who is like coveted throughout the entire league for his services because he is so good, but he's on such a bad team like the Cubs, and he's getting up there in age. He can help so many teams, but the Cubs want like prospects for him, and he's not worth that many prospects, you know. So it's an interesting situation for Mr. Samardzija. But we'll see how he'll probably end up with a 500 record with a sub 4 ERA. But we'll see how he does. Look at his WHIP, a 1.32, and he's been solid for them. So we'll see how he does. Travis, well, he might even be traded at the trade deadline. So we'll see. And then second we have Travis Wood. He's also solid. Had a over 4 ERA, which is not good, but still he on the Cubs. If you had a lot of starts, then you're pretty much the second starter. And then Edwin Jackson, I don't know why the Cubs gave him 4 years, $52 million, but he went 8-8 last year with a 3.8 ERA, so not too bad, but also not the best. So he's definitely getting overpaid, but in 3 years he'll be off the books, and maybe a team will pick him up. I doubt it though with his bad contract. And now we have Jason Hamill at the 4 spot, 6-8, 4.5 ERA, but he had 160 innings pitched, so he was either picked up by the Cubs from the Orioles, or he was traded to the Cubs from the Orioles. So we'll see how he does in the 4 spot. And then Carlos Villanueva, in limited time last year, 100 innings pitched. He had 4 wins and 4 losses with a 4.05 ERA, so he'll probably have a better year this year, just not spectacular, you know. Now let's look at their other starters. They have Jake Arrieta at the 6. Well, he's not going to be pitching, obviously, because he's at the 6, but he might be used as a long reliever. He's hurt right now, so we'll see. Chris Ruzin, 3.3 record with a 4.61 ERA. And then James McDonald, who came over from the Pirates. Only 60 innings pitched because of his injury, so we'll see if he can work his way into the starting rotation. Their closer, Jose Veras. And then their centermen are interesting. They have Pedro Strop from the Orioles, who is pretty solid. I saw him pitch yesterday. He was playing spring training, and I watched him pitch, and he was pretty good. So we'll see how he does in the setup role. And then Wesley Wright, he came over from the Astros. He got traded from the Astros to the Tampa Bay Rays, and then now he's on the Cubs. So he's a pretty good pickup for the Cubs. He might develop to be a pretty good reliever. So we'll see how he does. And they have a lot of bench hitters. I'm thinking either Javier Baez or Mike Olt either go back to single or AAA, or maybe one of them just stay. Out of the two, I think Mike Olt would have to stay in the MLB, because Olt is pretty good, and he came from the Mac Garza trade last year from Texas Rangers. And Javier Baez, he's hitting everything, but Starlin Castro is so good at his spot that he'll probably go down. So yeah, that's the situation there. Justin Ruggiano is pick up this year, probably a bench player. Emilio Bonifacio, I didn't even know he was on the Cubs. I thought he was on the the Royals. I guess that's Infante. So Bonifacio, he's a good contact hitter, but he'll probably come off the bench too. George Kataris, like I said, backup catcher. Ryan Kalish, backup outfielder. Arizmendi Alcantara, backup second baseman. And then Donnie Murphy, Chris Bryant, Josh Vitters, Ryan Roberts, and Chris Coughlin. All of them probably will go back down to AAA. We'll see how that works out. And then the relievers, Justin Grimm, James Russell, who's a good left-hander, Blake Parker, Hector Rondon, Arodys Vizcaíno, and Kyuji Fujikawa. And their prospects as of now, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, Jorge Soler, who is still in AAA, I believe, Albert Almora, Mike Olt, and yeah. Alright, so that'll do it for the Chicago Cubs. Let's move on to the Milwaukee Brewers. I hate talking about this team because they have, who you call him? Ryan Braun, Mr. Juicy Juice. But I'll have to talk about that anyway. They have some good pieces, so we'll see how they do. They went 74-88 last year, 4th in the Central. That's because Ryan Braun missed half of the season. Alright, so their additions, Matt Garza, who was supposed to go to the Angels, but the Angels were stupid and they rescinded their offer within like 24 hours, so it's not his fault, but Angels were stupid. K-Rod, he just re-signed with the team. Lyle Overbay and Mark Reynolds. Their losses, Norichika Aoki, Berg Badenhop, and Chris Narveson. So Garza, he's probably going to be he's a nice pitcher for them. We'll see how he does. I think he'll have a pretty good record because in a tough AL last year, he pitched pretty well for the Texas Rangers, so I think he'll pitch well for the Brewers as well. And then that's a lot of wells. But Francisco Rodriguez, he's probably he's at the stage of his career where he'll be a good setup man, not so good closer, so we'll see how they use him. Lyle Overbay and Mark Reynolds, they strike out way too much. Overbay came from the Yankees, Reynolds also came from the Yankees, and Reynolds hits righties pretty well, with lefties he's not so much. So I think they might platoon the two, or do they play different positions? I know Lyle Overbay plays first, but Mark Reynolds, I think he might play third, so we'll see how they do. Norichika Aoki, he went to the Royals. And I don't think that's too big of a loss for them, unless he didn't have anyone behind him. They had Chris Davis, not the Orioles Chris Davis, but the other Chris Davis, and so he'll get more time. But Nori Aoki, he was pretty good for them last year, but he's a good contact hitter. But they have other options at leadoff, so yeah. And then Berg Badenhop, another reliever, and Chris Narveson, I think a reliever as well. So let's look at their lineup. They got Carlos Gomez, also a very good hitter. 490 slugging last year, 24 homers, yikes, and 41 steals. Just a great player for them. He just needs the right pieces around him. He's a very good trade chip, though. So we'll see what the Brewers do with him. Gene Segura, he came over from the Zach Greinke trade with the Angels, and Angels are regretting that so much right now. He had 11 homers, 66 RBI, 39 steals, and a 297 average. Those are beastly numbers. Then we got Ryan Braun, and Mr. Juice. I hate talking about him, so I just won't talk about him. He'll probably have a decent year as well, so we'll see how he does. Aramis Ramirez, he's on both of my fantasy teams. I have two, and I hope he has a good year. His knees, I think, are ailing him right now, so we'll see how he does. I think he'll be okay for the season, as long as he doesn't go down. I think they have other options, so he's out of the cleanup role, but Ryan Braun can go into that cleanup role if he goes down. So they're okay if he's pretty getting up there in age, but they're okay if he goes down. Jonathan Lucroy, also a great year last year, 297 average. He had a spectacular year, so I think he'll stay on the team. And fifth is the perfect spot for him. Good RBI guy, good clutch hitter. So yeah, let's move on to Lyle Overbay. He only hits righties well because he's a lefty batter. But he just strikes out way too much, and he thinks he's a slugger. But he's not a premier slugger, that's for sure. And this is what I'm talking about. Chris Davis had a very nice year last year. 21 homers, 70 RBI, 261 average, 461 slugging. Those are nice numbers for this guy. And Scooter Gennett. He only had 280 at-bats last year, but he did have 9 homers and 38 RBI. So a lot of nice surprises for the Brewers. Their starting rotation looks like Giovanni Gallardo, who had a solid year last year. Matt Garza, Kyle Loesch, Marco Estrada, and Willie Peralta. So the first 3 are very nice, but then the final 2 they might have to do some work on. And then their closer is going to be Jim Henderson, who had 26 saves last year. And then their setup men, Brandon Kinsler and Francisco Rodriguez, K-Rod. I don't know why I said his name that slow. But it looks like their bench is going to consist of Ricky Weeks, who's been their starting second baseman, but struggled last year, 280 at-bats, 246 average. So he might be a trade chip for them. And then they have Mark Reynolds, who's a first baseman, so he'll probably platoon with Lyle Overbay. He had 14 homers, 37 RBI, but only a 229 batting average, which is why he's on the bench. And now let's go to the backup catcher, Martin Maldonado, who's solid, I guess. Not much to say about him. And then Logan Schaefer as another backup outfielder. Relievers, Tom Gorzolani, Tyler Thornburg, Will Smith, Frank Francisco, Alfredo Figaro, and Jimmy Nelson, who's probably going to start in the minor leagues. So they don't have too many prospects, so I won't go into that. But that is the Brewers lineup, and that's their team overview. Let's move on to the Cincinnati Reds. They went 90-72 last year, third in the Central. They added Skip Schumacher from the Dodgers and Brian Pena from the Tigers, I believe. And then they lost Shin-Soo Choo, Bronson Arroyo, and Ryan Hannigan. So Schumacher is going to probably take over Choo's spot, but then at the same time, Choo is such a good player, but it's a big loss for them, to say the least. Brian Pena, just a backup catcher, not much to say about him. But they lost Bronson Arroyo to the Diamondbacks, so it sucks for them. Their starting rotation is definitely going to be depleted. But let's see what their lineup's looking like. They got Billy Hamilton, and he had 63 stolen bases in AAA last year, so he's going to be taking over Choo's spot. But he needs to make contact with the ball because he is just so fast that if he just hits a grounder, he has a chance to get on base. So if they teach him to be a good contact hitter, he's going to be unstoppable. Then we have Brandon Phillips at second base, who's been old reliable for them. 16 homers, 67 RBI, 277 average, nothing too special. Then you have Mr. Votto over here. 535 at-bats, 292 average, 22 homers, 91 RBI, 427 OBP. That is ridiculous. And 488 slugging percentage. Now we have at the fourth spot, we have Jay Bruce, who only had 265 but cracked the century mark in RBI and had 30 homers, so he'll be very nice for the Reds. Ryan Ludwig, he in limited time last year, he had 249, and hopefully he'll have a healthy year this year. Todd Frazier, I really like Todd Frazier. He's one of the good guys in the league. And he only had 256, but 20 homers and 74 RBI. Then Devin Mesoraco, the catcher, a bit overrated in my opinion, but he's still solid. And then Zach Cozart, 270 average, 12 homers, 67 RBI. So they brought back most of the team, just lost a few key players from last year to free agency. So now let's look at the rotation. Got Johnny Cueto at the 1. I doubt that'll happen. He made a rehab start, so probably your opening day starter will probably either be Matt Latos or Homer Bailey, who got signed to a huge contract, so hopefully he can perform. Mike Leake is your third, and Tony Cingrani at the 4. Matt Latos is at 5 for some reason, but I think he's going to take over Johnny Cueto's spot. And then Aroldis Chapman is your closer, obviously, but most of you know that he got hit in the head. So he's probably not going to be ready for the opening day. He'll probably be back sometime around May or June. So hopefully, prayers to him. J.J. Hoover is your seventh man, and Sean Marshall will probably slide into that closer role. He had a tough outing today. I watched a little of the Reds and White Sox preseason game, and he just had a tough outing. So we'll see how that works out for him. Skip Schumacher is on the bench. Brian Pena, the backup catcher. Jack Hanahan, the third baseman. Chris Heisey, outfielder, going to be backing it up. Roger Bernardina, backup outfielder. And Chris Nelson is going to be... He's been trying to revive his career, but he's going to be the backup third baseman. Relievers-wise, you have Sam LaCure, Manny Parra, Alfredo Simon, Jonathan Broxton, and Logan Ondrusek. And their only real key prospect is Billy Hamilton. So that does it for the Reds. Let's get right into the Pirates. Went 94-68 last year, second in the NL Central. And they added Edinson Volquez and Chris Stewart as a backup catcher. But they lost A.J. Burnett, Marlon Byrd, Justin Morneau, Garrett Jones, and Michael McHenry. So, basically the big one they added was Edinson Volquez, who was struggling in the Padres, so they traded him to the Dodgers. He struggled on the Dodgers, so now he's trying to get back to his groove on the Pirates. And then they lost A.J. Burnett, who was so good for them last year. Then they lost Marlon Byrd, who they acquired at the trade deadline. And then they also lost Justin Morneau, who they got from the Twins at the trade deadline. And Garrett Jones, they just lost to free agency. So let's look at their lineup. Starling Marte, he just signed a 6-year, $31 million extension today. So he's getting paid big money. And he had a solid year last year. 44 stolen bases is the big number to watch. So hopefully, I think he might be able to crack that number this year. So we'll see about that. Jordy Mercer is your starting shortstop. Andrew McCutchen, you know how good he is. 23 homers, 90 RBI, 25 stolen bases, 297 average. Just a great overall player. Pedro Alvarez struggles in the average department, but had 32 homers. Neil Walker, solid at the second base position. Russell Martin, good at the catcher position as well. Gabby Sanchez at first base, and then Jose Tabata in the outfield. Now let's look at their starting rotation. Francisco Liriano is slated to be the opening day starter. Then you have Garrett Cole, the great prospect for the Pirates. Wandy Rodriguez, Charlie Morton, and Edinson Volquez is your number 5 guy. But then there's 9 potential players that could be added to the rotation. Or 4 that could be added. Jeff Locke, he's hurt right now, so we'll see if he can take Edinson Volquez's spot. Vance Worley, who just got signed from the Twins, I believe, or he got traded from the Twins to the Pirates. Brandon Compton, and then Jameson Taillon, another top prospect for them. Their closer, Jason Grilli, who had a nice year last year, 26 saves, and then their setup men, Mark Melanson and Tony Watson. Their bench consists of Gregory Polanco, Travis Snyder, both outfielders, Clint Barnes as a backup shortstop, Chris Stewart, who they just signed from the Yankees, I want to say, I'm not sure, Josh Harrison, the backup third baseman, and Chris Dickerson in the outfield. The relievers, Gianmar Gomez, I apologize if I butchered that name, Justin Wilson, Vin Mazzaro, Stolmy Pimentel, Brian Morris, and Jared Hughes. And their top prospect at this point is Jameson Taillon. So finally, let's move on to the St. Louis Cardinals. They went 97-65, first in the Central, and they're going to try to repeat their performance this year. So who do they add this year? Well, Peter Borges, Johnny Peralta, and Mark Ellis. They lost Carlos Beltran to the Yankees, Rafael Furcal to the Marlins, David Freese in a trade to the Angels, John Axford, he got picked up by another team, I don't remember, I think it might be the Rays, it was another team, they picked him up, and then Edwin Mujica to the Tigers. So Peter Borges, I know him pretty well as an Angel fan, and I was pretty happy for him when he left because Mike Trout was taking his spot. But now he has so much more freedom in the outfield now. And he can play every single outfield position, and he is super fast. So the Cardinals will be fine in the speed department. I'm predicting at least 20 steals for Peter Borges this year. So we'll see how that pans out. Johnny Peralta, picked up from the Tigers, I think. Yeah, he got paid this year, 4-year, $52 million. I don't think he deserves it. He juiced, and he should be out of a job, honestly. But he got paid, and that's that. Mark Ellis, he came from the Dodgers, and he's competing for the starting second base spot. So we'll see how that pans out. Alright, so their starting third baseman, Matt Carpenter, is going to be leading off for them, surprisingly. But he did have a .299 average with a .381 OBP, so it's understandable. Second, you'll have Peter Borges. He'll be batting in the 2-hole. Matt Holliday in the 3-hole, who's been spectacular for them. 22 homers and 82 RBI last year. Alan Craig in the outfield as your 4-hitter. He's a good power hitter for them. I would rather see Holliday in the 4, but I guess either way works. And then Matt Adams, 25 homers and 72 RBI last year, so he's another good power hitter. Yadi Molina, just solid for them. One of the best hitting catchers, if not the best, at .305. Johnny Peralta at the 7-hole, and then Colton Wong or Mark Ellis at the 8-hole. There's possible starters, starting rotation. Adam Wainwright, who had a solid outing today in spring training. Shelby Miller, Michael Waka Flocka, Lance Lynn, and then Joe Kelly. And Jaime Garcia might get thrown in there later in the year because he's hurt right now. Their closer, Trevor Rosenthal. Their setup men, Kevin Segrist and Carlos Martinez. Their bench consists of Daniel Descalso, John Jay, Mark Ellis, or Colton Wong, either way. Tony Cruz as their backup catcher, Shane Robinson, backup outfielder, and Pete Kozma, backup shortstop. And Oscar Taveras may be coming up later in the year. He already got sent down to the AAA, so we'll see. And let's see. Their relievers finally, Randy Choate, Seth Manis, Pat Neshek, Jason Mott, and Sam Freeman. And their top prospect is Oscar Taveras, along with Colton Wong and Steven Piscotty. So my predictions, I think the Cardinals will win the Central again. And then I say, or it's either the Cardinals or the Pirates that win. And then I think the Reds will come in third or fourth, and then the Brewers may come in third or fourth. And then the Cubs will obviously finish last, breaking 100 losses. Those are my predictions, guys. So, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Alright, bye.